So, folks, though I am supporting Governor Ron DeSantis as our GOP 2024 presidential nominee, I still consider myself to be a Trump supporter. Hell, I was one of the OG Trump supporters back before he won and back before it was cool to be one. You know, before social media conservative grifters jumped on the Trump train to push merchandise and gain followers. But I have feared for a few months now that the Trump of 2016, hell, even the Trump of 2016 through 2022 has changed. And when I saw the Truth Social post from Trump yesterday, well, that kind of confirmed it for me. I'm proud to have BLM support. Come again, BLM, like Black Lives Matter BLM, 2020 summer of George Floyd, mostly peaceful BLM, the organization that is directly responsible for the demonization, demoralization, and even defunding of our police officers, BLM? How? Why? What? But as shocked as I was to see Trump praise BLM, I probably shouldn't be, because this is a pattern for Donald Trump. Anyone, and I mean anyone, who praises him gets his attention and, unfortunately, his respect, even if it's fleeting. Mark Fisher, a BLM leader, recently came out on Fox and Friends to praise Donald Trump, and that's all it took. Now, look, I agree with Fisher that Democrats don't care about black people. I got it, and I'm with you. But Fisher also pointed to very real improvements made in the black community during the Trump presidency. Again, agree. But is that enough for me to forgive BLM for what it did to our country, our cities, our communities, and our nation's law enforcement officers? Oh, hell no. Trump does not need to cozy up to BLM to advance the priorities of black Americans. Or does he? Join me now with his take on it is Wrong Speak Publishing founder Adam Coleman. Adam, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to get your thoughts on this because, again, I think this was very conflicting for a lot of conservatives and Trump supporters. On one hand, we like to see black Americans saying that they see conservative accomplishments in the black community. That's always a positive. But when Trump says that he's happy to have BLM support, I don't know. I'm a little concerned about that. What are your thoughts?
Well, for one, BLM was a white movement, to be honest with you. While the faces of it at the very top, they were basically black Marxists. The core of the BLM movement was majority white people. And while there were opportunists who were burning up cities and stuff like that, there were lots of white people as well. So when someone like Trump says BLM support is equivalent to getting black support, it really isn't. And he is not aware enough to understand that. And to answer the question as far as why is Trump accept this particular support after what we went through, and it's because Trump likes anyone who likes him, right? Even if it's for a moment. I remember early in his presidency, he spent his entire campaign, his first campaign, talking about China, how bad they are, how terrible they are. Xi Jinping is horrible. And then he went to China, they rolled out the red carpet, treated him like royalty, and he said, you know, that guy's not so bad, right? So that is actually one of his biggest flaws. He will cover for anybody who says anything nice about him, at least for a moment. But as soon as anybody criticizes him, fairly criticizes him, he turns his back.
That's my concern as well. And if we look to the first Trump administration, obviously, I think it was a fantastic administration by and large. He did great things for the country, for all Americans. But there's no denying that he put people in really bad positions, really bad people in really bad positions. And then after the fact, when it blew up in his face, then he took, no time in criticizing those people. They're awful. They're horrible. But he put them in that position. So I fear now that a Trump 2024, people say he's learned his lesson. He knows who to trust and who not to trust. But you're exactly right, Adam. If anybody says anything nice about him, then all of a sudden he's a fan. So I'm really concerned. And I'm wondering if the Trump zealots on social media, if they're seeing this, if they can acknowledge it, or are they just so up Trump's keister that they will refuse to criticize him even when it's well-deserved?
Yeah, they're not going to criticize him, especially right now during the primary when they have a clear enemy like Ron DeSantis. That is their number one target. And so even if Ron DeSantis is right, which, mind you, for people who have a short memory, just about every single person that you see on social media criticizing Ron DeSantis, calling him the establishment, calling him a rhino and all this stuff, were praising him less than a year ago. We're dying to move to Florida, if not move to Florida because of Ron DeSantis. So let's just keep that in mind. But now, because, like you said, zealotry, they see Donald Trump as their leader. and Donald Trump made him his number one adversary. And so, yes, they're going to excuse this. I've already seen the remixing of, well, Donald Trump really meant this and he really meant that. But at the end of the day, this is Donald Trump's flaw, right? And if China can figure this out, anybody else can figure this out. Anybody who wants to use Trump for whatever gains they want to make, they will do the same thing. And if it just takes one time on one TV show to say something nice, to get a job like John Bolton, like what else? What else? Who else can do the similar type of thing?
Very concerning. And a lot of the criticisms that people made during the Trump administration that he cozied up to Putin or whatever, I dismiss those because, listen, I don't think he cozied up to Putin. I think that he said that he respected the strength of Putin. So I thought they were separate things. But this does bring up concerns for me, and it makes him a rich target for the left because he has an affinity for saying things like that don't read well and don't play well. But you brought up Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump. By all accounts and all polls, Donald Trump is still well ahead of Ron DeSantis in the primary. Do you think, though, that Donald Trump is more concerned about Ron DeSantis than he and his team may be led on?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I rarely hear, especially since the primary started, I rarely hear Trump talking about Democrats. I rarely hear Trump talking about Biden. And if anything, because I don't hyper focus on what Trump says on a daily basis. He says a lot of things, but what really comes through, it seems at the very least 50-50 shots taken at Ron DeSantis versus shots taken at Biden and Biden's administration. So it's very, very clear that Ron DeSantis is his number one opponent. And I think if Trump wants us to believe that he is not worried at all, then why is he talking about him so much, right? Why are they going after him so much? Right. If you're not concerned about something, it doesn't even cross your mind. You don't even put up with it. Why does he go after Nikki Haley as much? Why does he go after Vivek? Actually, I've never heard him say anything negative about Vivek.
Or right? Nikki Haley, really. I mean, I really have not heard him say anything nasty about anyone, including Chris Christie, maybe here and there. But Chris Christie is the most vocal against Donald Trump. And we really haven't even heard Donald Trump go after Chris Christie, which tells me exactly what it told you. He is more concerned about the rise of Ron DeSantis. And I also believe that these polls right now that have Trump so far ahead, especially in Iowa, I think that they are very misleading. So I think it remains to be seen. Tonight's going to be a big night for Ron DeSantis as well. I'm going to get your thoughts on that in a moment. But I also want to ask you about one of the biggest controversies, at least in pop culture, that's going on in the country right now. And that's what that Deadspin sports writer, senior sports writer, did to that little 9-year-old boy who had his face painted half black, half red, something that a lot of sports fans of any age will do to show their support for the team. I have yet to see it, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it'll happen. I have yet to see Deadspin come out and make any apologies. Do you think that they're happy that they just got the clicks out of this and they got the recognition from this? Or what do you think is behind them not coming out and issuing at least a correction?
Well, I mean, from a legal standpoint, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I would imagine issuing an apology is an acknowledgement of a mistake. And then that might open them up to litigation even more so than it already does. But I actually am not surprised by any of this stuff. As a sports fan, I've been more and more turned off by sports journalism because sports journalism is basically political sports journalism. It is very much so ideological, and they love the clicks and they love spreading their ideology and making people see things that aren't really there. And this is the perfect example of it. A child dressed like a Native American actually is Native American, right? But this person is so racist and such an ideologue that to him, this person who just looks white, right? This kid, and even more so, it's a child. This child, his target, looks white. And so I must stretch my imagination to make this kid appear like David Duke. And that is actually what's really heinous about this ideology, is that it doesn't take any prisoners. It doesn't care if you're a child, doesn't care if you're a baby, doesn't care if you're an old person, right? Feeble, strong, does not care. You are, you're basically allowed to be smeared. You're basically allowed to be used as a pawn, a political pawn. And that's exactly what we saw here. And it's absolutely disgusting. And I think more and more rational people are realizing what sports journalism has turned into.
Yeah, it's activism is what it really is. I
Yeah.
want to talk to you about some of the writings that you've done because I think that they're so interesting. One of the things and one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on my show is because I saw a tweet from you, I believe it was a week or so ago, and you tweeted something about how you've been watching these videos on libs of TikTok of some of these they, them, non-binary, fox gender, transgender people and their weird postings. And of course, you said in your tweet that you watch them and as much as you want to watch them with the volume on because sometimes they're comical, even if sad, you said that you watch them with the volume turned off and you learned something very interesting. Tell my audience what you learned by observing this.
What I observed is that there's something deeper than what they're saying. You know, sometimes, and if you watch enough videos, people say the same type of stuff over and over, and it's because it's a script, right? They're not true believers for a lot of these people. They're just repeating the thing that they're supposed to say that gains them attention. But what I see is sadness. I see loneliness. And what I was trying to do was not necessarily just humanize them, but kind of understand who these people are, because I kind of do understand who these people are. I've been lonely, extremely lonely at periods in my life, and I know what that looks like. So when I see someone who appears lonely, I understand and I kind of have empathy for it. So when you see them, for example, have the camera in their face, but they can't make eye contact with the camera, right? They say things like how happy they are, but they can't make any sort of gesture with their face and the facial expressions that they're actually happy like a normal person would, right? They're just saying things, but their body is expressing disappointment, hurt, loneliness, sadness. It's incredibly troubling when you watch their body language, when you watch their facial expressions, because it generally doesn't match the rhetoric that they're saying.
Do you think that there's a part of this fixation on LGBTQ pronoun culture that has to do with these, especially young people, wanting to belong to something? They feel like this community gives them a sense of purpose, a sense of identity. Do you think that that community is also preying on the vulnerability of these people that you say are lonely, maybe struggling with mental health, maybe have sexual abuse or harassment in their past? Do you think that that's part of this here, that these people, as much as we look at them and we maybe want to make fun of them because they act outrageously, that this is actually much deeper psychological issues that these people are experiencing that's being manipulated by a community?
Absolutely. One thing that's kind of interesting is because I've gotten to know some of these people maybe in real life and you know, from a distance. And just in general, I noticed that anybody who talks about sex constantly generally isn't having sex. You know, so if I'm describing someone who's incredibly lonely, who isolates themselves, but yet they're saying they're pansexual, they're not really having sex with anybody, though, right? They're too socially awkward to be around anyone to have sex. And I think that it tells you everything right there. They're just saying these things. They're saying these things to fit into a particular group that will accept them, even though they're socially awkward, even though maybe they're autistic, maybe they don't fit in with the crowd, right? But they're just saying these things. Are they actually pansexual? Are they genderqueer? Putting on some clothes and saying that you're a woman now or you're a boy now, like that's easy, right? Saying that you'll have sex with anything and everything that walks because you're very open. Well, that to me is a sign of desperation. You have no limitations. You have no boundaries, right? You'll say and do anything as long as someone loves you.
And they like the attention that these social media videos get them, even if it is in part negative attention. It's really sad what's happening, especially with our nation's youth. I wonder what you think as well. Some of these people, the way that they dress, not just cross-dressing, but it seems like some of these people go out of their way to make themselves unattractive, or at least unattractive by traditional standards. And I don't just mean, oh, a little less attractive. It seems like some of these individuals really go to extreme lengths to make themselves unattractive, whether it's multicolored hair, whether it's the way that they dress. It feels like maybe they lack self-confidence and they hate the way that they look, so they take it to an extreme to purposely look bad, because then maybe it takes away some of that spotlight on their insecurities. Do you think that that could be part of it? And if so, because we live in a social media generation, what would you tell these young people who are just desperately searching for some kind of validation?
So to highlight what you're saying, completely agree. I've seen it personally, even when I was growing up. Maybe back then it was dressing like goth or emo, but I would see people know what the norm is and try to fit into the norm. And when they can't fit into the norm, they say, screw it. I'm not only not fitting into the norm, I'm going to accept the abnormal, and I'm going to double down on the abnormal. So that's when they go to the extreme. But it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because they don't fit in, they do even more things that make them not fit in, and then they get upset because they still don't fit in. Which, by the way, these people are desperate to fit in, right? So there's envy, there's jealousy that still resides in these people. What I would tell them is that all your problems can be fixed by you, right? There is no group that will, solve everything. There is no group that will speak for you. All your issues that you're facing are ultimately your problem, and if they're your problem, the solution resides in you, and you can overcome them. And that's why I try to write about. I try to write about overcoming these obstacles, overcoming social anxiety, overcoming loneliness, depression. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be sitting here with you. So, I mean, I think there are people who are using them, and that's what's really unfortunate. So I'm empathetic to the certain ones that I know deserve some empathy. The ones who are malicious, I have no empathy for. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're using these people.
Right. Yeah, manipulating. You mentioned your writings. Where can my audience go to read and hear more from you? Because you do a lot of great work, and I think that you explore it into a different level than a lot of just the conservative talking points out there on social media. Where can my audience find you?
For the most part on Substack, adambcoleman.substack.com. I'm also a columnist for Human Events, and I frequently write for the New York Post, so they can keep an eye out there.
Well, I certainly appreciate the work that you've done. You're a great follow on Twitter, on X. So thank you so much for taking the time today. I appreciate our conversation, and I hope to have you back one of these days soon.
Thank you so much. Anytime.
Thank you.